Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the podcast that shares ideas on how to upgrade your lead generation. Here is your host, Glenn Schmeltzley.
Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the show that helps you upgrade your lead generation. If you've been following any of the recent episodes, we've been covering a couple of books. When I'm recording this is summertime, and I love reading books in the summer. We're going through, and now into the third episode of our talks with authors on marketing books. And this is on a subject that I like to deal with because it still perplexes some of us, marketing automation. And the book that I'm bringing the author in today for can really help us break down what marketing automation should be doing for our companies and bringing our leads to the point where they're ready to talk with sales. For some strange reason, this is also the third episode where I'm speaking to a person from New England. This time it's from Nashua, New Hampshire. And our guest is the founder of a consultancy focused on Pardot in Nashua, New Hampshire, called Cheshire Impact. He's also the host of the Hardcore Marketing Show, which has just blown past its 250th episode. You'll also find him sharing views on marketing automation at industry events, including Dreamforce. Prior to Cheshire Impact, he served in the U.S. Marine Corps, and he maintains that kind of tough physical level of activity through being a skydiver and a mountaineer and a triathlete. In 2019, he released the book Marketing Automation Unleashed, which I've not only read, but gifted to a few other people. Please listen in this episode where we go through the 10-point assessment that Casey gives so that companies can diagnose where they are in their use of marketing automation. Sure, many companies have it installed, but that doesn't mean that they're squeezing maximum value out of it. Listen to him talk about what KPIs we should be using, how we should be thinking about how we do things in a digital age with our content, not like we used to do when we printed stuff on paper and handed it out as printed collateral. So please join me in welcoming Casey Cheshire. Okay, let's hear from today's guest. Hey, thanks for being on the show, Casey.
Hey, appreciate it, man. I'm super excited to be here. I know we've swapped a bunch of messages on email, and I get to see you and we get to chat. I'm excited for today.
Nice. Well, you have a book that's part of this book series that is called Marketing Automation Unleashed. And I've already talked about it in the intro, but I've got kind of a big question for you. Let's maybe start off with understanding, like, in your own world, the way that you look at this, and you look at it a lot because, you know, your business is about this. How would you, in a nutshell, describe marketing automation?
Yeah, marketing automation. And I think sometimes even just this question is what leads a lot of us to doing the wrong things, experimenting in the wrong directions, and then trying to figure out, you know, months later, why we haven't seen the results we're looking for. And it's just because what is this thing? And part of the problem, or probably the solution really, is that there are a lot of things that make up marketing automation. And so to me, in very simple terms, and this was explained to me early on, and that really just made such a difference. To me, marketing automation is 4 words: capture, nurture, automate, and report. Capture, nurture, automate, and report. And those 4 words, and we can go into them if you like, but those 4 words summarize all the feature sets, summarize all the things you can do with it. And if you're using your marketing automation to capture your leads and to capture their information and to track them throughout the journey, if you're using it to nurture them through that entire buyer's journey, even when it's in sales's hand, you're giving them some care and some treatment as you go. And then finally, you're using a little bit of automation. So you're not doing all sorts of manual work anymore. It's not the 90s, people. We don't have to be manual. We can automate a lot of these processes, like automatically building lists or automatically alerting sales that someone is ready to go. They've been sniffing around and they've tripped the tripwire. It's time to send them over to sales for some immediate attention. Automation can make that happen right now. It can make it happen at 1:04 p.m. or 1:04 a.m., even if marketers aren't in the office at the moment. It can make sure that the lead gets over to sales right away. And then finally, reporting really for me is ROI. And my whole career as a marketer shifted from, I don't know, the la land of marketers just trying to keep up with the daily activity, and the activity is never enough, and the CEO is always asking for more activity, and you can never really get out from underneath it. But when you start tracking ROI and showing that I spent $4K on this source, and look, it brought in $400K, that frees you up to invest more. And then budgets change and people immediately start giving you, oh, you did that with 4. How about 8? How about 12? How much can I give you? Is that scalable? And so that really changed the game for me. And that whole idea of ROI reporting on marketing automation. So for me, capture, nurture, automate, and reporting, ROI reporting, is really what makes up the core of marketing automation.
All right. That's a really good summary. I think most of our audience already has, a marketing automation tool in place. Yeah. And I think they would, if I asked them to close their eyes and imagine that they pop open that console, they're seeing some of the things you mentioned. They're seeing lists, they're seeing email templates, they're seeing contacts. And you've helped to kind of wrap that together to say, look, people, this is, you don't have a title in sales, right? You're not a bag carrying salesperson, but by having that system, you've kind of taken responsibility for how well your company keeps track and assists those buyers who are moving towards the point where they actually talk with sales. Right. Yeah. And that's a weighty responsibility, right? We can get into the details of, what you call the output and, what's a qualified output for that. But you're responsible. You're not just there to, kind of get some massive number of hits on a website. That's not what this is about anymore. Right. But when we kind of, I know I do sometimes, when we look at the marketing automation tool that we have in front of us, we can kind of, glaze over, and we can kind of get maybe lost in some of the details. And so you provided in your book kind of, I think the book is basically, it's the spine, it's the backbone of the book, like an assessment to help people understand whether that thing that they've got is actually being used well or not. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah. A lot of times, whether you're talking to the product people, and look, the salespeople at these products can be great. They can also be really good at sales, and whether it's sales or the product people themselves, they're creating things, but they're not you. They're not the end user. They're not the customer out there trying to use this thing. And so oftentimes you might be distracted by a product webinar on the latest, greatest feature that's been added onto that product, but maybe that's not exactly what you should be working on in your company to really make things change, to really help sales get those leads. Maybe that's not they don't know that. They're just putting out really cool content. And I've even seen other partners or other consultants and professionals out there saying, here, and there was a blog post that said, here are the 8 most unused features of this marketing automation tool you should use right now. And I had to think to myself, okay, should we use those features because simply they're unused? Yeah. Are they the most unused for a reason? Should we be using this? And it kind of made me angry. I had a little moment to myself. I thought, what are we doing here? And so I realized that no one had been giving us a roadmap, to tell us, do this first, then this. And without that, people are left to their own devices, you can't fault ourselves if no one's given us this path. Then we just sort of go with whatever sounds good. Yeah. And so, if I had $1 for every time an organization asked to set up multi-touch tracking ROI reporting, and they didn't have multiple touches to track, they would be rich by now. There is a sort of order to the chaos. And so that assessment you mentioned, I called it the Cheshire Success Index because the acronym CSI was just too good to pass up. And so, but what it is, it's an assessment, but it's also a roadmap. It's also a maturity model. It's like all those things jammed in together, and it's a series of 10 steps, 10 strategic and tactical steps of utilizing all the features and the strategies that are enabled with marketing automation. And the idea is at the very beginning, and it's in the book, and there's all of them listed out, and you basically go through each one, and each one has a question. And one example is one says, do you know where your revenue driving leads come from? That's number 2. And if you say, yes, I know where they're coming from, you get 1 point for that question. If you're like, nope, no clue, but I know I need to get that, you put a 0. And if you kind of have some of your sources tracked and some of your sources aren't tracked, you're like, I'm not feeling perfect about that one, you give yourself a half credit, 0.5. And so when you go through all 10 of these questions, and oftentimes it helps to talk to someone about it when you're going through, but the book lays out the details. It's not just the question, but it's all the questions below it. But if you feel really comfortable about saying that you're nailing that particular strategy or tactic set, then you put yourself in as a 1. You add up all these scores, and you have a total between 0 and 10. And that tells you how well you're using marketing automation. It doesn't matter what platform you're using, HubSpot, Pardot, Marketo, SharpSpring, things I haven't even heard of. Cool. Use this assessment, find out where you're at. And sometimes you may find out that the tool you have doesn't have the ability to get to a 10. And that's okay, perhaps for now, but maybe you need to then upgrade to a different tool at some point. But this just gives you a sense for where you should be at. And what I found is that when you complete this, 3 things. 1, you know where you're at. And a lot of people have that sort of uneasy feeling where they're kind of using their tool, they're kind of not using their tool, and they think they could do more, but they have no idea. And it's kind of hard to ask a friend, like, how are you nurturing? What are you doing? And they might tell you a few anecdotes, but you don't really know how well you're doing or even how well you compare to someone else. So with this, you'll have a number between 0 and 10 definitively telling you you're a 3 out of 10 or you're an 8 out of 10 and how well you're using marketing automation. You're also going to know your very next step because these are in order. So you want to do 1 first, then 2, then 3, then 4. So the very simple, this is like if you hired me to come on site and do this really expensive on-site consulting, I would literally tell you to do the lowest number that is incomplete. So if you were complete 1, complete 2, but 3 was a little iffy, everything else was great, and you had a couple other iffy ones, we come back to the lowest number that's incomplete. We address that first and foremost. And now you know where to go. Now you have a next step. And then the last thing it gives you is it tells you what a 10 looks like. And that's where we want to be. We want to get to those 10s. And so the last 3 or 4 steps are actually really cool sci-fi sounding tactics and the idea of dynamically changing your entire website to reflect your customer and all sorts of really neat things. That's where we want to get to. We want to get to the playground where we're doing all sorts of A/B testing and all this fun stuff. But the way we get there is we do all the ones before that so that we can play in that last phase.
Yeah, no, you've said that very well. The notion of kind of making sure you've got those basics done. So we can start off even with number 1, which you pointed out. So marketing automation isn't alone in our tech stack. The granddaddy tool that has been around in most companies is a CRM, right?
Yeah.
So you say step 1, are you even? And it's like do you even lift, bro? Are you even making your marketing automation tool talk to your CRM? And I believe the question was, are the emails that you're sending out like factoring in where that contact exists from, that they're kind of like part of one gargantuan database, even though they're 2 separate tools, right? So you start us off right there. Why do you start there?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll just even read it. I have it here. It's do you send targeted emails to prospects based on information from both marketing automation and CRM? And it's kind of a, hey, we write books, we can make meaty sentences. It's a really dense question. And so when I break it down, the first part is, do you send targeted emails? And so what I'm looking for there is when you send out your emails on a monthly or whenever basis, do you send to everyone on your database at once, or are you picking one list versus another? And it sounds super simple, but it's step 1. Are you sending are you segmenting at least 2 different kinds of groups? So maybe now is partners and next one is prospects, or now is this kind of prospect and the other one is some other prospect. If you're breaking them up a little bit like that, that's what I'm looking for. And then the second thing, which you highlighted, I really like taking in consideration where things are at in your CRM. Are you using information from your marketing automation and your CRM? Marketing automation, we're kind of used to, okay, well, am I using my marketing data to send this email out? Like, what's their industry? What's their I don't know, location and geography. Okay. But what about the CRM? It's interesting. We always forget that if they're in a deal stage, or if they're in a certain, maybe they're midway through the deal stage, or maybe they're about to sign the DocuSign, they're about to close with sales, and they're in that final stage. Maybe we want to go radio silent. There was a funny thing that happened to me. I'm a big fan of Zoom. We all are. God bless them. But I was about to renegotiate. I was negotiating my contract. Giving the guy a little hard time. So you got to give sales a little hard time to make sure you get the right price. And I was about to, sign the DocuSign. And that morning I got an email from marketing at Zoom offering something like 50% off and a free this and a free that and a bag of coffee, And then all I did was I forwarded it. I don't know, it was kind of a meme, but they offered it.
No, they're the same company.
Same company. I forwarded it to the sales rep and I said, I would like this. And he's probably like, son of a marketing, what are you doing? Like, Come on, I had that in the bag. So, perhaps, and a lot of people do this, they'll have their marketing automation snooze the person or just kick them temporarily off a list if they get to a certain stage in the sales process. Just stop. Don't send anything right now. No special discounts and offers. It's in the final stages. And if you're doing all the things we just described, you give yourself a 1. Naturally, you might have said, wow, I do the first part, but I don't do that second part. Totally cool. You give yourself a 0.5 on that answer, because all that 0.5 is doing is just reminding you to come back to this and maybe change a few things, or maybe add in some of the things we've talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's like your list, that number 1 item, it's so meaty. It picks up where I think most people leave off there. And I've seen marketing automation tools implemented. It's a lot of work. And, I have been the marketer and I've sat with the marketers. They've been writing email after boilerplate email. And so by that point, they just want to be done. Yeah. But they have to imagine, and, maybe back to our kind of gym kind of idea where you're, sizing up the fitness of this product, it's like your list is the spotter for them. And it's looking and saying, yeah, but, even though you did a lot of work, because you haven't quite tied into the CRM, you didn't notice that a flag was flipped saying, yeah, we sold them, or they are in that last stage.
Right.
And, until you do that, you really aren't seeing the whole life cycle of that prospect. And I'll take it even further. If you're in a SaaS business, you have a different issue where your marketing automation system may actually still be in touch with people after they have bought, the system, because it's a subscription, but you've had to make a very important shift in, you're not going to talk to that person the same way, just like, maybe, a teacher doesn't talk to that prized pupil sitting in the front row like it talks to the people sitting at the back of the class, right, who zoned out. So,
was that you? Were you in the back zoned out?
I was somewhere in the middle. Yeah,
Yeah. I'd be sitting next to you.
Let's not talk about that. But yeah, you're helping, it's, as you say, the questions underneath the question, like, we need, like, we know the specific examples and we all have that, tale from the trenches of, where we should have not sent that email. But how do we tag that? Where's like, and it gets your brain firing on, okay, there are things that we need to create in our marketing automation system. And then if that becomes a rule and it follows the rule, this will work. Right. And so every implementation will start to become its own customized thing, because in fairness to that poor software rep who was telling you about the wonderful things the tool can do, they can't know that stuff. They can't know how your own company works. You have to tailor the software to the way your company works, right?
Right. Yeah. No, you certainly tailor it. Really, you tailor it to your customer, right? You tailor it to your buyer. And the good news is there still is this roadmap. Like, just because you're customizing doesn't mean you can violate this roadmap. So there is a rules to the road. There is a speed limit. There is a path to take. while at the same time, it's completely customized to your buyer and to their journey, to how they like to buy, into your sales process and your sales team for sure along the way.
Yeah. I'm going to read one section that you've got that actually covers off this very part. And I think this is also a kind of a truth in advertising thing, because the software vendors will tell you, you can save a lot of time when you set things up, but you kind of flip it on its head after you describe to people, once they've put in these rules and maybe set up an email sequence. You say the point of automation is to create paths that your buyers are sorted into automatically. Okay, so yeah, we got that so far. And then send them content tailored to their interests. Instead of spending your time tactically executing each month. So in my mind, I picture, I've got 40 different, blank emails open on my screen, and I'm just paste. So we get out of that, but you say what you've got to do is spend your time creating even better content. Is that what you think, we as marketers were really meant for? Is that what this tool is really there to do for us? It's, I guess, not there to give us the 4-hour work week.
Well, yeah, well, at least 4-hour work week away from technology, right? So
good point.
I remember my first time when I was moved to a new company, and I'm the marketing guy, and I'm the only marketing guy there. And all right, I'm running marketing and reporting to the CEO. Let's do this. And then I get the process from the old marketer, and it's this. We were sending emails on NetSuite. Now, this was like an eon ago. NetSuite, I hope you've improved your stuff. But back then, there was like a 3.5-page process doc they haven't to send an email. And I'm like, God. And then another company I was at, they had this report that would show a bit of an ROI report. It was kind of like the TPS report, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I had to do it every week. I was a marketing coordinator, had to do this report every week. It would take the person I replaced a day, like a solid day, to manipulate all these Excel sheets and files and all that. So I learned how to do macros to kind of automate that, But the report and just sending out these emails, it made it so that the job really was the tech. And so for a while there,
well, you've run out of week, right? I mean, your time is all done. Exactly. Just pulling the report together, and you didn't, maybe you spotted something that's a fantastic insight. Oh, that report is telling us we should do this. Oh, it's 4:00 on Friday.
Yeah, you used the whole week. And maybe it was maybe like late 90s, early thousands, where it was, we have all this cool tech, but the tech became the focus. And also the tech took up all the time, and maybe people are okay with it because they're getting digital. But then we lost sight of the buyer. We lost sight of personas and understanding who they are and what they really need. And we're trying to force them into these little brackets. And so what I love about marketing automation is it really frees you up to do what you were designed to do, to be the creative marketer, to be the analytical marketer. If you want to look at the data and find the missing link, do that. If you want to write an amazing blog post or an ebook or a book, or amazing interacting with people on chat or social, do that. It's the human thing. So it's like, let's get the tech out of the way. So one of the best things I like to see about a marketing automation product is how important does it have to be in your life, right? If it just does what you ask it to do and gets out of the way and doesn't make it itself like a drama, it's not high maintenance, right? It does what it does and moves on. That's the magic right there. If your tool can do that, because it shouldn't be about it. It just distracts you from not really thinking about your customer.
Yeah. So we've handled kind of the objection of, why should I think about writing that good content? How do I, talk to them better? The other objection that I hear from folks is my list is really small. And I don't know about your view on this. The way I tend to think about that is every kind of automation. I don't care. Like you said, it could be a macro that you set up. The point of an automation is you got to think, okay, I'm going to do an activity right now. And maybe my activity, like writing a really kick-ass email, is only going to be seen by 4 people, right? Yeah. But I'm not doing it right now for just those 4. I'm investing more of my own time in this, because when a fifth person comes along, I guess the fancy term is the marginal cost to me of getting the same email to that fifth person is zero.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that goes for the sixth and seventh and all the way up. So I've got to take a little bit more time now and dig deep and make, my investment into thinking not about 4 people, but I got to think about, all right, this is potentially an infinite number of people.
Right.
Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, marketers tend to have that tempo, that monthly tempo of sending out your email once a month, your campaign. Oh, what is it this month? It's a campaign, it's a webinar, it's a this, it's that. And so we're kind of in that cycle. And I remember once having a CEO swing by at lunchtime, and it was like, "Oh, Casey," because that's what CEOs sound like, right? "Oh, Casey, how many emails did we send this month?" And I was like, "Oh," and thankfully I don't normally know all the details, but I knew that detail, and it was about 1 million emails this month.
Wow.
He's like, "Okay, well, let's send 1.5 million next month." All right. And this was before I would know any better. So I'm like, okay, but that was that old technique. And that's sort of the old way of doing things. And so a lot of marketing automation is moving to a new way of doing things, which is why it's not just a tech. It's like, it's a whole shift in your marketing. But to get to your question, you're in that monthly tempo.
Yeah.
Well, you send an email and it seems to work really well. And people really wanted that, like that webinar. Great. Take that email, you drag it over into a little nurture campaign, and you make sure that the recording is available for that webinar instead of the live webinar registration.
Right.
Now you get some evergreen content.
Yeah.
And now the people that come in, a month from now, they'll get a chance to hear about that.
That's the mind shift It's not what I've done this month. It's that asynchronously someone, however many months from now, reads that and takes in that content, and they say, "Where have you been all my life?" Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
That's my biggest complaint with newsletters, right? Newsletter. Oh, we have our monthly
backwards.
newsletter. It's backwards. And I think I probably put this example in the book. I used to write for a magazine, the New Hampshire To-Do magazine. In New Hampshire, we're a humble state, live free or die, cute little granite state. Some people don't even know it's a state, but it's a state. It's only within 13 colonies.
Yeah.
But I wrote for this travel magazine for them. And so every month I would come up with a cool thing. You would come up with a cool thing. Sometimes they'd give you an idea of what you could write about for New Hampshire. And I remember the first couple of things were kind of interesting. I took hockey lessons as an adult. I traveled to the seacoast and got some lobster but eventually you're running out of things to do because it's New Hampshire and it's only so big. And so what ends up happening is later articles, I'm writing about like a model train museum and just whatever I could find because we're running out of things. And this is what happens on newsletters. Our best content already occurred like a year ago.
Yeah.
A lot of marketers, they're excited. New job. They're writing a newsletter. They're on fire. They're writing great content. And then a year and a half in, they're like, damn, what do I write about? I already wrote about everything. And then the newsletter content just gets kind of light, not even their fault. It just, there's nothing else to write about. But the idea is instead of, and anyone that comes in now gets your worst articles because your best stuff, you were on fire a year ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Do? Instead, in a nurture campaign, everyone gets your tailored essential nnewsletter. They get your best article, followed by your next best article, followed by your next best article. So it's like the perfect newsletter sequence instead of a time-based, monthly send. That's the goal.
Right. And there's the mind shift. And, we can allow ourselves, at least those of us who are old enough to have done what you did with things like a print publication. We're not on dead trees anymore. This is digital. So, and I think an even other way to look at that is if you imagine like this long line of people that have come before the person who's about to read your next thing, you should be going in. We're talking about what you do with your free time. You should be going in and looking at that person who's now like one of your best clients, but a year ago they were reading something and, maybe through sales, there was some anecdote about, oh yeah, well, you guys helped me over this problem, or it gave me this value that you guys didn't even know that you provide. Go back, get into that sequence that you made and see if you can tuck that in so that the person that is going to read it today is going to get the latest and greatest version of how you describe that whole journey.
Right.
What do you say to the person who looks at that way of sending these asynchronous emails and says, yeah, but it's not as authentic as like if I were to type out something right to that one person? Is that a fair criticism?
Not as authentic. So like if you have like a personal email.
Yeah. If somebody says I'm a Luddite, I'm not going to use this stuff. I'm just going to sit there and, tap away on that. Do they have a case to make, or do you think that, we can really do better than what they're doing because the tool exists?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there is a bit of magic power in marketing automation, right? And you can use it for good or for evil, right? That quote of much power and responsibility, is upon you. And so, there certainly is the ability to abuse it. And, the black hat of the world, the wizards that are trying to mess things up. But I think in the end, if you're trying to help your customer and you know that the product will actually help them because it's helped a bunch of other people,
right?
You're and despite themselves, they may not pay attention, and maybe they will, but you want to like kind of shake them and be like, hey, you're about to walk off a cliff. You're about to get audited or something. And without our software, you're screwed. You're going to get sued for $1 million. Let me help you. Right. So, if that's really your intent and you have that noble purpose, and there's a great book, Lisa Earl McLeod. I don't know if you've read this one yet, because I know you are the book guy. You are it. Lisa Earl McLeod wrote this book. It's like Selling with Noble Purpose.
Okay.
And the premise is essentially when she studied pharmaceutical sales reps, she could predict without even knowing the data who were the better reps and who sold the most, and it all boiled down to the ones who really wanted to help sold the most. They would go in and they would. And the person who was like the top person would see the people who were sick in the waiting room and was like, I know that this is going to help them, and I'm here to make that happen. And so they would go into that meeting and they were and the doctors would feel that. And so I feel like marketing can take a page out of Lisa's book and market with noble purpose. So I think if you're marketing with noble purpose, if you're authentic to that mission, then if you want to write a personal email versus a corporate one, go for it. Right. Yeah. We don't want to lie to people. We don't want to trick them. If you can get them to take action and it's going to save their life or save their company, then do it.
Yeah. And you're right so let's kind of meet in the middle here. I think one thing that people should liberate themselves to do if they are, writing these emails, they first have to, lose that old corporate spokesperson, like we used to use in press releases, right? Yeah. A company spokesperson said. So Forget that. Make it a personal one-to-one email. That's how email is, read. Yeah. And that word help you said, from Lisa's book, like that's really how we should do it. If we think maybe our CEO is a pretty charismatic person and they're, they're the one that they're the avatar, that we're speaking through, right? It's coming, from the CEO to this new prospect, and the CEO, they maybe started this thing in their garage. So, they're like, hey, I've been working with a lot of people who've been in your situation at this time. I think the help thing wins definitely in the marketing automation field versus not when you consider you gave the example 1:04 a.m. So that, that prospect, they're up in the middle of the night. They're literally, they can't sleep at night over a problem. And it's 1:04 a.m. Now, if you have marketing automation, you've got information on what other pages they've been to. You can kind of get attuned to probably where they are. If you come close. Yeah. And let's say that, they hit that, all right, I'm downloading that resource. And then, the CEO and that resource together, there's an email that explains everything and says, here's what you really need to focus on now. That to me beats, how else are you going to help them? Are you going to send them to your the catacombs of your blog where they're left to fend for themselves to try and find an answer?
Right.
No. So I think right there you've got, if you set it up well, you can be way more helpful. And frankly, you won't be up at 1:04 a.m. responding to this person. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, one of my favorite other radio channels, or a radio channel is WIFM. WIFM, which is what's in it for me. I had an old marketing mentor, say, hey, look, when you're looking at that email, before you hit send or program it to send, ask what's in it for me, and not for you as the marketer, but you as the recipient. And if that seems like an email that has something for them, then send it. But if that email looks like it's completely all about you selling your crap, then maybe you don't send that. Like, you need to have a little litmus test to say, am I just being entirely thinking about me? Like, am I doing what's in it for me as the marketer, or am I thinking about it from the recipient's shoes? And a lot of times we do that. And my biggest offender, please don't ever do this, anyone listening ever, and we'll make a dent in the world. Don't send an email purely to let people know you have a new website, right? Because think about that. Who cares?
Yeah, it's
a new website. I don't care.
People only have so much bandwidth, so I love that. What you don't send,
wasted my attention to tell me you have a new web. What does it do for me? I don't know. Like, what? Why? Instead, maybe saying, oh, we have this new resource that's going to help you with your job or something. Great. Happens to be on our new website. Here's how to navigate it. But here's this resource for you. That's what we're talking about. You're right. The attention is limited. You don't have that much time. And so to waste their attention, I'm definitely unsubscribing if I get that email from you.
Right.
What it says, we don't actually care about you. We just care about tooting our corporate horn to make some mucky muck happy. And it's like, that's not what this is.
Yeah. And it requires swallowing pride, right? Even if you're proud of that 10 email sequence, let's say that kind of person lines up perfectly with who, they need it right now. They're kind of moving along, maybe 2 touches, maybe not 10. And, you have to be okay with, well, they didn't see my best stuff. You know what? It gave them the utility that they needed. And now they're closing a deal with you. So be okay with that. But we got to talk ROI for a minute. And the thing about, these marketing automation tools, like I said, some of them have been around for a little while. One person's take on, why they don't report positive returns. I love it. They said, they have to keep that I out of ROI and the resource investment in the picture, because there can be quite a distance between the I and the R.
True.
Right? What do you think, how do you think maybe a person who's allocating budget for this tool, some of them aren't cheap, and the people who are going to, who are working with them, how would you counsel people to kind of look at that ROI? How would you counsel them to, look at the reports that the tool spits out? Is it as cut and dried, or do they need to maybe think a little bigger than just money goes in and money comes out?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of questions wrapped up in that, and I'll just start shooting in different directions. One of the things that comes up too is like paying for marketing automation. And I think hopefully at this point in our civilization, we all understand the need for a CRM, right? If sales is still tracking things on Excel spreadsheets, you're behind, man, or like gold mine, or some ancient software. You're behind. It's not gonna work. And so hopefully most of us have understood that. Now, how do you measure, the ROI of a CRM? God, it's the thing. It's the core to the company selling more things. It is the thing that tracks the sales. Marketing automation, the same thing. It is the tool that tracks the ROI of everything else. So to talk ROI about it itself, that you can do that and we can do that, but it's also the tool that is going to give you ROI on every other marketing thing you're doing. So without it, you're not going to track any ROI. So it's like, it's table stakes at this point. table stakes to have a CRM. It's table stakes to have some kind of marketing automation tool that can do as many of those 10 steps in the CSI as possible. It's not enough just to have an email tool to batch and blast, which is why you see even classic email tools like MailChimp has landing pages now, right? Because they understand it's the whole full picture. It's not just the email. You got to have the whole thing. So it is table stakes. You got to have marketing automation. And you know what? If you don't have it, your competitor does, and they will blast you out of the sky. But maybe they're laggards and you get it, and you can't compete with someone who has it if you don't have it. Like, there's just no way, because they're going to operate like they have a marketing team 3 times the size, and their sales team could be half the size and twice as busy as yours. Because it's not marketing automation. So it's a no-brainer. But that being said, when you're tracking the ROI of everything else inside there, people have gotten really complicated, and the tech keeps growing and everyone keeps adding more features. And this idea I mentioned earlier, the multi-touch tracking, touching in trying to give allocation of ROI to every little touch along the process and this and that. And in the book, one of the early things I want people to do, and I mentioned CSI number 2, is knowing where your leads come from, the lead source, the first touch. We sometimes call it lead source.
Yeah.
And then multi-touch, where does that factor in? That's in there, but it's 10. It's at 10. And the reason why I've set it up like that is because there's some simple ROI stuff you can do right away, very quickly with most marketing automation tools to just understand the first touch. Where did these guys come from? Yeah. And sometimes there's confusion saying, oh, the webinar was our best source. Not really, because people didn't magically appear on your webinar. They didn't just hear in a dream that your webinar. Where did they hear about it? How did you find them? How did you first find them? Yes. The reason you want to get really good at the first touch tracking and the first touch ROI is because if you find out something's doing really well, you want to go get more of them. If the webinar does really well, great, let's get more people on the webinar. Cool, we have no idea where they come from, so we can't. But if you know your lead sources and you know, okay, well, we filled up a webinar with half a hundred dozen people from Google AdWords. Okay, great. Or they came from this event we went to, but we spent $20,000 at that. But man, we got so much back. If you know where they came from, you can go back and get them. And I know it's not perfect, but it's easy. And it's the one thing that literally when I was able to show this one CEO who's like, I'm cutting your budget, how much can you do with, and sorry, we're going to use it for some random dumb ops tool or something. But that conversation was flipped when I showed that story where I showed, look, we spent $4,000 on this source. Yeah. It turned into a hell of a lot of pharma customers out this other side. And then his eyes shifted, changed, and he just from that day forward couldn't give me enough money, which is smart. That's what CEOs would do. If you're showing you've been a good steward, which is what we're trying to do in marketing, being a good steward of that money, we're investing it in a good lead source, it turns out to be successful, they're going to say, okay, great. How much can I give you? And then you're going to try to figure out the volume of that source you can get to. But it really shifts the conversation. So first touch is so important. And the last thing I'll say on that is when I think about the position marketers are in, we're often behind this power curve with sales and even in organization, right? We have all this great tech, but when COVID happens, it's pretty attractive to try to lay off marketing, right?
Yes.
And the reason that happens is because we're not doing first touch tracking. And we definitely don't want to get distracted and go all the way to CSI 10 and try to show multi-touch tracking, because the way that conversation goes with the CEO is, well, we've got these leads from different places. I know sales claims to have gotten them all, but they didn't. And I want you to know that I've influenced these sales. I know sales is calling them, but you know what? I've influenced them. I sent them emails too, and I'm helping too. And can you give me more money to help too, right? And then look, my stats show, and I've even seen these reports on my own that show, hey, these webinars are contributing, millions of dollars. And you're like, oh, okay, is it? Or what happened if, you met a prospect at a conference, hey, went on a VIP dinner, they stayed up all night with the CEO, laughing, joking, having drinks. The next day, marketing sends an email, thanks for meeting us at the conference, and then the deal closes, and you tracked that last touch as the most important touch. Then is it the marketing email? No, we all know that that's not true. So when you try to
so you're being fair, right, on either side.
But you can't base your career on that. You got to go to first time.
Yeah. But there's the very first part. That's the capture part, right? If you don't capture it, if you try to go later and the question arises, if you haven't captured it, you're just going off of hearsay, right? Just people's opinions. So I agree with you. And I love where you started with CRM, in that we have a stack, and the marketing automation tool is part of the stack. The ultimate answer may feed something that goes into, let's say, the CRM. And ultimately we know, let's say, deal size from the CRM. But there's this whole chain of things that's happened, and you can't have a part of that chain just missing, or where you're not capturing it, because again, you rob yourself of the ability later on to really understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I just want to wrap up with one question, Casey, and that is, you're a busy guy. You've got, a consultancy on the go. You've got, a podcast, the Hardcore Marketing Show going on. You took time out and you felt it was like you had a unique perspective that you wanted to stamp on marketing automation in the form of this book. What was it that made you do that? What do you think it is about you that made you see something that others didn't see?
It's not me. I've been super fortunate. When I, was under the gun at that one group and that one job I had where I was just that marketing manager getting beat up like every other marketing manager on the planet. And I got marketing automation, and something clicked in my brain, and I just ran with it beyond the implementation and just went for it. And then to see the shift in that, that CEO's office, and then so many other places and so many other boardrooms I've been in where marketing's, getting crapped on, and then yet the situation turns 180, and then sales is like, how can I help? I want this now. Let's do this. How much more money can we get? To have that happen? My career went from being just a marketing manager, going through the motions or trying to make things happen, to a VP of marketing at a software company in less than 3 years after that. And I really attribute it to just showing ROI with marketing automation. So my whole goal for writing the book, my whole goal for talking to you is just for fun. Because I'm a big fan of you. But the idea for sharing this book with people is I want them to experience that too. If you do this, you can experience that crazy rocket ship. Maybe you'll be even faster than I was. Maybe you'll be a VP tomorrow by showing these things. And so I just want people to experience that too, and then just take that marketing and run with it, and then just dominate that company and grow it, and then be the one in that company that's just making change.
Yeah, no, that's great. And the rocket ship he's talking about, listeners, is on the cover of the book, and it's a SpaceX rocket ship. And right. So we're both fans of that. And, you have got a way to propel people in their careers. And I really like how, generous you are with, thinking of them and helping them go on the same journey you've gone on. So listen, I'm going to have links to the book and, your contact information in the show notes. Is there anything else that you want to quickly mention before we wrap?
Yeah, the two places, the book's on Amazon, and then the best place to reach me is at CaseyCheshire.com. That's my website. And then you mentioned the podcast, the Hardcore Marketing Show, and it's core spelled like the Marine Corps, not like the Earth Corps.
Got it.
That's one thing to pass on to people. But yeah, I'd love to, anyone's feedback, if they want to shoot me a note, love to hear from them. And next time I'll wear my SpaceX shirt.
All right. Well, listen, thanks everyone for listening to the end of the show, and please check out the show notes and share this episode with someone that you feel would be getting value out of it.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter at Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.